Welcome, Jack.
All right. Good to be here.
Yeah. How are you today?
I am good.
So you are a Central Pennsylvania guy, right?
Yeah, grew up in. Is anybody here from around Altoona, Hollidaysburg? That's right, one. And everybody
One that's
calls
willing
it
to admit it. Yeah.
Hollidaysburg.
Yes.
People call it all kinds of different stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Small town.
So tell us maybe like your first business memory. Did you have a lemonade stand? Anything like that?
So many. The first one, and this was actually probably illegal, actually. I'm going to get real with you guys. My dad, and this is just ingenuity, my dad ran this ski club on the weekends for kids and adults and stuff like that. He would get these free ski passes. And so I'm like, these are free ski passes. So I would know that they were there, and I was only like in grade school or whatever. I would take these ski passes and go into the lunchroom and sell them during lunch to kids who wanted ski tickets. And it was like 100% profit.
Yeah, yeah. No overhead there.
And my dad's like, you're giving away a lot of those things. I'm like, yeah, I'm just a generous kind of guy. And yeah, my profit margin was insane. And I would walk around with these like rolls of cash. Like I must have looked like a drug dealer. And I would like lose these like rolls of cash. Like I would go to my friend Ryan's house and be like, dude, you left like $150 in cash under my mom's couch. And she's wondering what drug dealer I had over today. So that was the kind of, I never liked to follow rules. And I never liked people to tell me what to do, which I think is a common trait. But my mom's like, you got to get a job. You got to get a job like all your friends are doing. I'm like, all right, well, I found a DJ job, and I like to be efficient because I didn't really want to work, at McDonald's and do the 9-to-5 thing. So I got this DJ job where I could work one night and make more in one night than my friends did all week, and I could sleep till noon all week and not have to, do that thing. And just to show my mom, like, I could make more money more efficiently than my friends, and she would just get so mad. And I would go to this guy's basement who I didn't really know that well, and it would be really dark. And he would talk like Jabba the Hutt. And he would give me the keys to this van with this other guy, and we would drive to the wedding, do the wedding, come back, and then we'd come in, he would emerge from the darkness and then hand me cash. There were no taxes involved.
Yeah, this isn't shady at all. Yeah.
So much of it has to do with like rolls of cash when I was little.
How old are you at this point?
I'm like 14, and I would spend it on ridiculous things. Like, remember when laser pointers first came out? Remember those? I got the executive laser pointer, the kind that could like really damage your eye if you did it, because I couldn't just get the normal one you'd get in Spencer Gifts. I got to go online. I didn't even know the people wouldn't order stuff online back then, but I ordered the executive one, and it would go like 500 yards. For what reason, I don't know.
If you're going to burn someone's eye, you might as well go for it. Yeah.
So yeah.
Nice. Okay. So did you ever work like a normal job? McDonald's type job, or you
go-karts. I worked. Anybody know Meadows go-karts back in Hollidaysburg? I was really bad at that job.
Okay.
And I would watch the clock all day, and I think that was when I realized I'm like, how could I have a job where I literally just look at the clock all day? Like for that long, that's what I did, and I couldn't imagine doing like 50 years of that. So that was kind of my first taste of like this isn't fun.
And so at that point, are you saying, like, I need to be a guy who starts things? I need to be my own boss? Are you having that conscious thought?
Yeah, it had always been there, and I was always trying to figure out different ways to do things. I just didn't like to just do things the way that everybody told me to do them.
Mm-hmm. Did you find yourself, like, wherever you are, like, I got to improve this, or have you thought about doing it this way, or were you always offering suggestions that way?
I would just go do it. I would just go do it and do it better. Now I can, once I get going, like we were talking about lawn care right there. I could have gone for like 4 hours talking about how you could market your lawn care business. Like once I get like go, that's why I think Q&A is going to be really fun.
Yeah.
Like once I start going, like I literally can't stop. It's like a disease. Like, and so Marissa, my wife, right?
Good,
Marissa, my wife, sometimes she'll just bring something up and I'll start talking and I know she's not listening, but I'm just talking, like, cause I want to, we got to do it. We got to market it. We got to just execute it right now. Yeah. So.
And you met Marissa back in Hollidaysburg.
Yeah,
correct?
when we were 15. So we met when she was 14, I was 15. And I had hair down to here, super bad acne. And Marissa looked also, and we always say,
is
like, we
recorded, by the
invested
way.
early. Like, we got in good
Yeah.
because she ended up being a very good investment. And I was a weird investment. Yeah, so we've been married and have 3 kids. And
Awesome.
yeah.
And we'll come back to Marissa because one of those ideas involves her,
Yeah.
right, and stuff that she's developed on the side. So
Yeah.
that's great. So you're doing like wads of cash and all kinds of semi-shady
Illegal.
things through your
Paid under the table.
high school career,
Yeah.
right? And then you go off to college to RIT.
RIT,
right?
yeah, which is the nerdiest school in the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
My dad said it's like MIT except with an R. Not really true. And it was mainly just a bunch of computer nerds.
Mm-hmm.
But I met a lot of cool people. I met one guy, and we'll get into this later. I met this guy, Jake, at RIT. He turned out to be a pretty huge part of my entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. So what were you doing at RIT? Were you one of the computer nerds, or what were you?
I was a
you
computer
working
nerd.
on?
Yeah, I was in the new media program, which was like the first time they had. This was when things were starting to really shift. This is when like the internet just started to really
What years are these?
This is like 99,
Mm-hmm.
where things started to pick up. And I remember I was at a party and this homeless guy walked in. He looked like he was homeless, but his name was Jake. And he was crazy, like totally Howard Hughes, unpredictable. Like if he came into a party and there was a microphone, guaranteed he would either be freestyle rapping or screaming about something or like just taking off his shirt and running around the house like a maniac. He probably wasn't even drinking.
Yeah.
He was just that
It's his
kind of
natural
guy.
state.
But he had an energy about him, and my sister and I got to know him pretty well. And he dressed like he was homeless, but he always had these really nice cameras. And we're like, "What is Jake doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I started this little site with my friends Ricky and Josh called College Humor, and this other site called Busted Tees." And I could kind of figure out how much money they were making just by the traffic and the press and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're at least pulling in $20 to $30K a month as a college student.
Wow.
And so Jake dropped out our senior year and was like, "You're an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a sweet job, and you just gave up everything." Well, Jake ended up. So I started out at $23,000 a year, and Jake sold his company for $23 million a year later, 2 years later.
Not bad.
So just a couple more zeros.
Yeah. Just a couple.
To that side, and but it was and good thing there's no young kids in the audience, but I really hated school. Like I really hated it. I'm sorry. Like if I'm around parents and kids, they're like, don't say that.
Right.
It just was so structured and rigid. But it was my first experience with seeing like, okay, well, Jake isn't following the path that everybody's telling to me, which is go to school, get good grades, get a good job, get your pension, and then retire off into the sunset in Florida and drive your Cadillac like 20 miles an hour around. That was Jake.
Yeah, and that I mean, you already knew you weren't like a beaten path kind of guy. You wanted to start new things.
I just wanted to go out and make money. I was tired of being poor in college.
Yeah. And you're watching what he's doing.
Watching what he's doing, and we kind of lost touch after I graduated. But yeah, then
And what degree did you?
new media design.
New media design. So you're designing, and then out of college, where do you go? What do you do next?
So I only wanted to go to 2 places. It was one place called Pentagram, and the other place was called Frog Design. Mm-hmm. So Pentagram is the oldest design studio in the world. They have offices all over the world, and it's kind of like the NBA of design.
Yeah.
And I knew if I get into there, that would be it. I mean, that would be a good step forward. So I went into the interview thinking I was interviewing for a contract job. And so I'm like all cool and confident. I'm like, what's my hourly rate? And so I go into this meeting. I'm super sweaty because it was super hot out. And I get into the room with Lisa, my future boss, and the other partner, GA. And I'm like super cool, like answering all the questions. And then somehow I figure out this is actually a job interview. And then I start freaking out. And then I start being like, oh, my biggest weakness is that I work too hard, and like, and like all your standard answers. And so somehow and this is where I think a lot of these, you'd like to think that you were really smart. It was just like so many of these things were just designed ahead of time. Like it just so happened that when Lisa, my boss, was looking at my portfolio, Paula Scher, one of the partners in there, who's the one who designed the Citibank logo like on a napkin in the back of the car, Saks Fifth Avenue, she does a lot of stuff with Martha Stewart. They did the Hillary Clinton logo. Like, they're the best of the best. Yeah. She goes past Lisa's desk, she's like, hire that kid. And that was it.
Wow.
And so just those little tiny threads, and so I ended up at Pentagram in New York.
So why did you say hire that kid? What was she seeing? You sweating profusely?
It was copywriting, and I can get into that later, but it was copy. It was the website, it's so embarrassing, but my first portfolio website was me in a suit. It was like my dad's suit. It was a picture of me in a suit with like a tie in downtown Rochester, super sweaty. I probably hadn't showered. I mean, it was college. Like, I was totally unhealthy. And it was me just like standing there looking like super professional. And my professor saw it and like burst out laughing, but then felt embarrassed that she laughed at it. I pulled it up in the screen. She's like, and then she felt like, oh man, I shouldn't have laughed. I'm like, what's wrong? It's very professional. Yeah. And so I redid my portfolio, and it was all about designing for my parents. And if I can design for my parents, then you can design for anybody. So it was like these two old people like pointing at a screen. Oh, that's good. And so that was copy. That was the difference between like if you can write and you can tap into a conversation that's going on in someone's head and make them think, it's going to win every time. Yeah. So yeah.
Which is great, because I think, and I want to come back to that, because so often people, internet's a digital medium, right? You know, visual is all that matters, and you've done a lot with copy. You've continued to do a lot with copy and champion the importance of that. So I think we'll see that thread through your story repeatedly, right? So you're at Pentagram, and you're like any accounts there that you enjoyed working with?
So we did a lot of stuff for Time Warner. We did stuff for Bloomberg. We did the Jets logo and the whole Jets redesign. We did like literal jets, like planes, like with the big Jets logo. Like they hired like a custom typographer to make that big fat Jets logo. So we'd go out there to Jets headquarters, and I didn't know anything about football at the time, and Lisa obviously didn't, so we were like three designers walking in there. Now I know a lot about football because my son's a huge football fan. Okay. But we did stuff with, what was the other thing that was fun? Just so many, well, the Saks Fifth Avenue thing was interesting because we had worked on this brand, this new brand for so long. And Michael Beirut, I was in the room, Michael Beirut was presenting it. The CEO of Saks walks in, he's like, this is terrible, ditch the whole thing. Wow. And so he shut the whole project down. Somehow Michael Beirut was able to convince him to save that, and then that ended up being the brand that it is now.
And Michael Beirut is?
Michael Beirut's one of the partners, he's like the head partner there. So he's the one that did the Hillary Clinton logo. Okay. And so he's probably the nicest guy, but he's probably the top designer in the world, like just the coolest dude. And he had a way with words, and somehow he was able to save that project. Yeah. So that was cool.
So yeah, some very cool clients. This is in New York at this point.
This is in New York. Yeah, 23rd and 5th. And then I got bored, just because we're just doing the same things over and over again. Yeah. And I went down to quit, and Lisa's like, right before I quit, Lisa's like, we'd like to offer you an associate partner. And that was where I realized, I'm like, if you're not learning, and if you're not learning more than half of the time that you're there, you realize like you're just being comfortable. Like if you go in the work and you're comfortable every single day, and you're not stretching and you're not growing, then you know it. And we all know it. And I knew it. And so I knew it was time to move on. And so that's when I thought I wanted to get into advertising. Okay. So that was my next step.
Can I just pause for a second? So a lot of people, I mean, even maybe we're thinking about right now, like, am I learning half the time?
Yeah.
You took action at that point. You said, I can't, even the partnership thing, that sounds great, but I'm not going to take it, right? So what do you think was the difference for you?
I think I could have rode that train the whole way. I mean, they didn't pay a lot, Pentagram, because they don't need to, because if you should feel lucky if you're there. That's kind of their attitude. Okay. And I just couldn't live with myself knowing that I was really just mailing it in every day. And it just wasn't a challenge anymore. And I just started to have hobbies and stuff, which is weird for me. And that's when I knew I was getting bored.
Okay, all right.
And so it was time.
Is this when you started doing the music thing on the side?
I was doing music the whole time.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and at the same time, I was pursuing music full time, and I was signed a record deal and had a manager and was doing gigs and was recording at Sony Music and all this.
Wow. Okay.
Well, yeah, but I was in Sony Music, and I met this guy who I was recording with. I signed a 9-album contract. And so we would go in, 9 albums. He had me for the rest of his life. And so I would go in there, and then I remember I'd go in there, and Christina Aguilera would be recording down the hall, and Erykah Badu was recording. It was right across from the Hit Factory, which is where 50 Cent got shot. A little tidbit there. I didn't get shot. So I'm down in the writing room, and I'm like, okay. And I would get called at all hours of the night, hey, we have the writing room open, the recording room's open, come down now and record this guy Adam. Something started to feel not right about it, because I'm like, why don't we have booked studio time? Well, come to find out, this guy actually didn't work for Sony. His friend Rich did. He would borrow the studio time. He wasn't 30, he was 40. His sister wasn't his sister, it was his daughter. His biggest claim to fame is he produced all these DMX albums. So he had Grammys and all this stuff, and I was super impressed. Yeah. Turns out it was a little crazy, but it was a cool experience. But my music career ended when I was on stage in New York at this place called the Orange Bear downtown. There was probably 3 people, and in the middle of the set, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. And so that was it. And so I knew I was going to pour now all my effort into design.
Cool. All right.
So, yeah.
So 8 albums left, right? on that contract.
Yeah.
So you move over to Frog at some point.
I go to RGA. So
RGA, okay. I
go interviewing all these ad firms, and I go in there, and this is when Rihanna just started getting really big. And I go into RGA, and they're like, you're gonna, they worked on the Nike account. They just did a big deal with Rihanna. They're like, you're gonna be working on music videos with Rihanna, and this is gonna be awesome. You're gonna work on the new Nike running app and all this stuff. I was pumped. Show up the first day, so ready to hang out with Rihanna and whatever. And they're like, oh, by the way, the Nike team is filled up. You're gonna be on the Johnson & Johnson account. And not only on the Johnson & Johnson account, you're gonna be working on the Splenda account. So
not Rihanna.
First week, I'm working on Splenda banners and booking food photographers and making things delicious. If I heard make it delicious one more time, I was going to lose my mind. So I was having panic attacks on a daily basis. And this is the thing, this is the second lesson, and maybe some of you guys have gone through this, where it was I went there purely because of the money. They doubled my salary, because you can make a lot of money in advertising. Mm-hmm. One of those stupid Splenda banners probably cost Johnson & Johnson $150,000, right? And you guys look at banners, or they don't even use banners anymore, but you just kind of blow it off. If you saw a Facebook ad that's beautiful, a beautiful Splenda ad, they spent a lot of money on those food photographers, and you just kept scrolling. Mm-hmm. And so that was my first kind of foray in advertising, and I left within 3 months.
Okay, yeah.
I said I couldn't do this anymore. Yeah. So that's when I went to Frog.
Okay.
So I went from Frog to RGA, or I went from RGA to Frog, and Frog Design is one of the oldest industrial design companies. So they designed the first Mac, and just a lot of things that we now take for granted. Mm-hmm. And that was fun. It was kind of boring, but I'll skip over that part because it's not that exciting.
Yeah. So you've been in kind of the graphic design and design world.
Yeah.
And at some point you switched over to something new. And is this when you reconnected with Jake?
This is when I connect with Jake. So I'm at Frog, And Jake calls me up and he's like, so we have my partner, Zach, we started this little site called Vimeo. And when we sold our company, IAC, who bought College Humor, Vimeo was part of that umbrella. It was Jake's little project. And him and Zach built Vimeo up, and there was probably 3 employees. And he's like, Zach is leaving. He didn't tell me why, but I think it's because Zach didn't want to sell. And so now Zach's leaving. We need someone to take over the design of Vimeo. And I was like, do you guys even have health insurance? And so I met them. I sat down with them, and they all seemed pretty young. And
did he still look homeless?
Jake still did.
Yeah.
Jake never showered. At least I don't remember him ever showering. But he would go into these meetings with Barry Diller. I don't know if you guys know who Barry Diller is. He's the guy who created Fox Network and The Simpsons. And he's married to Diane Furstenberg, and he's a billionaire, right? He's got the bald head. Yeah. Jake would just go into his office with a sweaty T-shirt. This is Diane Furstenberg's husband, and he's he's got that big, huge building on the west side, that big Frank Gehry building, and he has a $100 million sailboat out there. And Jake does not give a crap about any of that. And so I interview with them, and I'm like, why not? I don't know. I mean, Vimeo was very, very small at that point. And it was another one of those things of, I'll take a chance. It was my first, I'm like, if I'm not ready to start a startup, at least I can join one. So when I started at Vimeo.
What year is this roughly?
This is 2007.
So YouTube's going at this point.
No, YouTube wasn't even.
Okay,
well,
YouTube's not even.
No, Vimeo was before YouTube. That's an interesting. Jake always made sure to tell people.
Yeah.
That YouTube,
I
Vimeo,
that,
and
right.
then YouTube. And that was bad because Barry Diller and IAC was like, you guys need to be more like YouTube. You need to be more like YouTube. You need to have funny cat videos. And we were like, no. And so when I got to Vimeo.
Because how were you positioning Vimeo? It's not YouTube, but it's what?
We were positioning, and Jake's slogan behind the scenes was, not everybody should see everything. Barry Diller didn't like that slogan. But it was about creation and for people who really valued quality video and not just crappy fail videos, that's what it was. And so in the office, everybody was in there. There was only 8 or 9 of us. We all cared a lot about Vimeo, or at video, and we all cared a lot about the community. What we didn't expect is that it was just going to keep growing 200% month over month. So we'd start out with 20,000 users. And I just thought this is how it happened. Now, after all these startups later, I realized that's not how it happens. We were just at the right place at the right time.
Yep.
So we'd go from 20,000 to 40,000 to 100,000 to 200,000. I mean, we were signing up 10,000 people a week. I mean, then it got into thousands a day. And we would just watch the logs. We had this TV in the office that would just, anytime anybody signed up, it would come up on the screen. Then it was just and it couldn't even keep up.
And that must have been crazy. You're working really hard at that point.
Well, yeah, and I remember what took Vimeo off was at the time there was no such thing as HD video on the web. The videos that you guys see now on YouTube, the super high quality, you can get the 4 or 5K type videos. There was none of that. There was only Apple QuickTime. Remember Apple QuickTime? Yeah. And you had to download it. It took 10 hours. And I remember Justin Alouette, when he turned it on for the first time, we all crowded around. We're like, no way. We can't put that online. How are we going to get that online? He's like, that's probably going to cost a lot of money for us to host those videos. It turns out it did. Yeah. That's why Vimeo lost so much money. And that's the other thing that was cool, and I can get into that about the people that I met at Vimeo and what they went on to do. There was a guy there, Zach, and we called him Iowa because he was from Iowa. And that was it. And he was crazy, and we used to have tasing contests where we'd have because we were in the same office as College Humor. So when you would go into the office, I would go into the office and be like, oh, I guess they filled up Josh's entire office with balls like you'd see at Chuck E. Cheese. Yeah. Or there's Amir trying to eat 400 chicken nuggets in 2 hours, and he's throwing up into a bag. And then they were filming that MTV show. Remember when they had the College Humor MTV show? You'd have a meeting, we were talking, and then you'd have someone yell, shh. And then we're like, we're supposed to have a meeting here, not film a TV show. But Zach, Zach was always really good at the tasing thing. Like he could get tased and it wouldn't even phase him.
Like real tasers.
Like real tasers.
Okay.
And he wasn't doing his work, and I'd look over my shoulder, and I'd be like, he's working on these robots, and we'd always see him working on these CAD drawings. And my partner now, Jonathan, who was the GM at Vimeo, he's like, I'm going to fire Zach. He's always working on these dumb robots. And finally, I was like, what are you working on? He's like, well, I'm working on this printer that can print out other printers. And I said, well, that's dumb. Get back to work. And he's like, well, I started this little company called RepRap in Brooklyn with my friend Bree Pettis. And I'm like, well, you're going to get fired soon if you don't do your work. Well, he ended up, he is basically the grandfather of 3D printing. Mm-hmm. He started MakerBot with Bree Pettis in Brooklyn. And here's where Jake comes into the picture. Jake sees some potential in Zach, gives him $25,000 to start MakerBot. Then Jake comes to me a couple weeks later, and he's like, hey, my friend David just started this little site called Tumblr, and I gave him $25,000. I was like, can I invest too?
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what Tumblr was. I was like, I have $2,000 in my checking account. Jake's like, no, I think you have to be like an accredited investor. And I was like, man. And so he gives David Karp $25,000. And Tumblr and Vimeo and like all those New York startups, we were all good friends. And so then he's like, he comes to me another time and he's like, oh, my friend or my cousin, and I'm forgetting his name right now, but my cousin started this little site called Bleacher Report, and I gave him $25,000. I was like, can I invest? No, you're not an accredited investor. And I was like, Jake, you don't even like sports. He's like, I know, but. And so then in 1 year, so years later, MakerBot sells for $400 million, Tumblr for $1 billion, and Bleacher Report another $500 million. So Jake, nobody knows this, but finally Jake got like a 2-page spread in Inc. magazine that he's like the Warren Buffett of startup investing, and nobody knew this.
Yeah. He's the college humor homeless guy.
Yeah. And then in the same office at Busted Tees, there was this guy, Josh Moore. We called him J-Mo. He was so loud and hated us at Vimeo because we were paying their salaries. Or no, he was paying our salaries because we were losing so much money. Busted Tees was making tons of money selling T-shirts. He's like, and he loved Pearl Jam, and I made fun of Pearl Jam one time, so he like hated me from that time on. He's like, I'm leaving for this cab company. And we're like, that sounds dumb. You're going to get onto a phone and call a cab. Yeah. Okay, fine. So J-Mo goes off, and he's the GM at Uber and gets 1% of the company. In the very early days, he leaves and does that. Well, he's the guy, if you type in Uber protests in New York, Josh is in the front of the courthouse. He's the guy. And he was perfect for Uber because he's like super loud and will kill you if you get in his way.
Gotcha.
And then there was one guy that kept coming in who was friends with Jake all the time. His name was Reggie Watts. I don't know if you guys know Reggie Watts. He has big hair.
Afro musical
yeah,
guy.
he's the band on is it Seth Meyers? He's like the guy who does all the music there.
Yeah, he's hilarious.
And then there was another guy in there. Who's the other guy? Oh, so Dan Gurwitch, who's now the head writer for John Oliver.
Okay.
So you ever see the John Oliver episode on cryptocurrency? Dan, don't be a Dan. That's Dan. He was at College Humor, and he was there all the time. Ricky ended up marrying Ricky, who was the founder of College Humor, who was there all the time hanging out. He married Allison Williams, who's Brian Williams' daughter, and now Ricky is head of Facebook video content. So like all the Facebook video stuff that you guys see, like the Facebook Watch, that's all Ricky's stuff. And I'm trying to think. There's just
it's like the College Humor Vimeo
mafia. Yeah.
And you were also creating something. You're still at Vimeo, right? With Flavors, or
I'm still at Vimeo, and this is when my I come into the office one day, and Mo, who was the one guy at IEC, he's like, well, you may notice that Jake and Jonathan, who was the GM, are no longer with us. And we're all like, there were only like 15 of us. It's like ripping, it'd be like everybody showing up here at church and be like, Steve is no longer with church today.
Awkward, yes.
That's terrible. And so apparently Vimeo, IAC was trying to sell Vimeo to Kodak, and Jake made a big fuss about it, busted into Barry Diller's office, went over all the levels of management, must have really made Barry mad because he fired him and Jonathan. Because they were trying to raise money to buy it to save the deal. Well, they ended up not, because AAC hated Vimeo, and they would be abused all the time. Like, we never got raises or anything. Mm-hmm. And now that's like they're
starting their own business.
Right. Yeah. And they're like, now they're like the darling of IAC. They love us, but they hated us for so long. Yeah. So we don't know where Jake is. Then we go on Gawker, and there's Jake on the front page with a giant bomb. And he's like, I got fired today. And it's just him smiling, smoking a giant. It's like, that was Jake. And but Jake ended up doing quite well. So Jonathan and I started this little site, Flavors, when Jonathan had gotten fired. Mm-hmm. So we built that, and this is where the grind of Startup Grind really started to happen.
Yeah. So explain Flavors. Like, what was the concept? What need were you trying to meet, and problem were you trying to solve? So
at this point, APIs, meaning like being able to grab pictures from Instagram and import them in, had just started to take off. So, and Squarespace really wasn't around. A lot of the big players weren't even really around. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, what if you could take all that data and make a website? And it would just automate the whole process. So I would go to work at Vimeo from 9 to 5, come home, hang out with Marissa, and then work from 8 o'clock till 2 in the morning every single night for a year. Plus doing freelance to save up money, knowing that when I was going to quit Vimeo that I had to have a backup. Mm-hmm. And so no vacations, no really, just grind. But I loved every minute of it. Mm-hmm. And this was the story I was telling you right before that you hadn't known, but we had gotten Flavors to the place where we were ready to launch, and Gary Vaynerchuk was in the office. Who knows about Gary? You guys know Gary Vaynerchuk? Yeah. So Gary Vaynerchuk is in the office because he's friends with Ricky and Josh, and I'm so nervous. And everybody knows that I was like a huge Gary V fanboy at the time, and he wasn't like Gary V the way he is now. And
what year
so
is this about?
This is like 2008.
Okay.
They're like, "Oh, your boy's here. You're gonna go. Your boyfriend's here. You're gonna go say hi to him." I was like, "Shut up, guys." And so I was so nervous, and I go into this conference room. It's just him. I was like, "Hey, Gary," and I get really weird around like celebrities, but not like super. I don't know how I would act around like a super celebrity. Yeah. But like the guy from 3 Men and a Baby with the curly hair. Steve
Gutenberg?
Steve Gutenberg. I met him in a hotel one time and said some really awkward things. I didn't even know what I said. And so I go into Gary and I'm like, can I show you something? So I showed him Flavors. He's like, yes. He does his Gary V thing. He's like, I'm going to invest in this. And Jake and Amir were in there, which are like college humor stars. And they were like, are we rich now? I'm like, you're not getting any of this money. And so he's like, I want to invest. This is awesome. I never do this. And I want to invest. And I'm like, oh, man, this is it. This is a startup dream. I'm living the startup dream. And so we exchange emails back and forth. And my partner, Jonathan, doesn't really know a lot about Gary Vee. I'm like, Gary Vee wants to invest in us. He's like, find out the details. So he had just started VaynerMedia. And he's like, I don't want to put cash in. I want to advise you guys and do all your marketing for free just for some equity. And Jonathan's like, I'm like, sorry, Gary, we can't do that. Oh. So I said no to Gary Vee, right, who now runs marketing campaigns for like the biggest brands in the world. Yes. And has like he was on that.
He's doing all right.
He's everywhere. Yeah. And so then it was time to quit my job. Mm-hmm. And who here has ever dreamed about quitting their job, what it's like? Well, don't do it if you work for Steve. But I rehearsed that so many times in my head, and I was so ready. I was like, man, I'm going to do it like Jerry Maguire, and be like, hey, who's called my wife back?
Yeah. Get your manifesto ready.
Yeah. It ended up not being like that. It ended up being Jonathan's like, just give me 6 months to raise this money. Quit your job. Give me 6 months, and we'll get that money. So I typed up an email, my quit email, and it was Marissa and I in the bedroom, and I said, okay, it's ready. I'm like, you hit send. because if this whole thing blows up, I can blame it on you. She hit send, and I'm like, what do we do? Did I just quit my job? I think I just quit my job. Marissa's like, I think we just quit our job. We had just had a baby, Jack.
Okay.
Just got a mortgage, a ridiculous mortgage, in 2008, which was the most amazing time to buy a house. And so I quit my job, no money. Well, I blew through all my savings, so like $40,000 in savings that I'd done with freelance. No health insurance, a baby, a mortgage, and a promise from Jonathan that we would get this money in 6 months. So on month,
Living the dream, startup dream.
we'd go out to lunch with friends, and they'd be like, "Oh, we'll pay. They're poor." Like, we are poor. But I wasn't nervous. It wasn't scary for some reason. But then on month 7, before I was ready to get a job at McDonald's, Jonathan, we got our first investment. I think it was like $250,000.
Is Flavors like public, like people are using it, or you're still building it?
Yeah, it's starting to get traction. Yeah. And so we get our first $250,000, and so I get a paycheck, and this is awesome. And then you get into that Silicon Valley world of investing. Then it was 250, then it was another 500, then it was another 2 million, then it was another 3 million, then it was 5 million, and it was just like millions that, like, I'd never seen money like that, but it distorts your perception of money to where now, if we would sell the company for $10 million, it would be a colossal failure. How did that get there?
Right.
I don't know. But yeah, that's when we start getting to these funny acquisition stories and the craziness.
Right. So you're talking to people who want equity. What do they want with that money? They're wanting to just acquire the company. They're wanting equity.
These investors, well, the investors want a return. So we had a lot of angel investors. One of our angel investors was Jake, and then another guy, Zach, who has a company called DIY.org. Another guy, John, who started that company, Peloton. I don't know if you guys have seen the bikes that you ride. Yeah. John Foley, who's super smart. And Dave Morin, who started that app called Path. I don't know if you guys remember the Path. He famously turned down $200 million from Google, and then he had to shut the whole thing down. So that's his claim to fame. But he also invented Facebook Connect, so I think he did all right with Facebook stuff.
Right. Now, speaking of Facebook, they come along at this point, right?
Well, no, it was MySpace before that.
Oh.
I never told you the MySpace.
No, the MySpace is still around, still kicking at this point.
So Flavors is taking off. We're at about maybe 100,000 users or whatever, and we get a call from Mike Jones, who was the CEO of MySpace. And he goes, Jonathan calls me, and I'll never forget, I was in my living room. He's like, Mike Jones called from MySpace, and they said he doesn't have to get permission from Rupert Murdoch for any deal under $50 million. I was like, does that mean we're rich? Does that mean I get my Lamborghini? I called my mom, I'm like, we're going to be rich. I'll get a Lamborghini, Mom. You can have anything you want. It's so funny, I think about it now. And so they fly us out to L.A., we go to MySpace headquarters. They take us downstairs in the war room, because I think this is when Justin Timberlake actually had bought some of the company. So they were like kind of trying to still remain alive. They weren't a joke yet. Yeah. And so we go down in this war room, and they tell us all this stuff. And I remember sitting at the table with the CTO. And at this point, my partner David had already plotted out the land he was going to buy in Florida and stuff. So he sits down, and we're sitting at the table.
Yeah.
And Dimitri, who was the CTO at the time, he's like, so what are you guys thinking dollars-wise? And David looks right at him and goes, $50 million. And he's like, and Dimitri's like, I was like, I think that was wrong, David. I don't think you should have said that. And he's like, and then he gave us like some really low ball number. I don't know what it was. And we were so embarrassed and so devastated. And that was our first experience into this acquisition world, which I can tell you about 52 more stories about that. So then after the MySpace thing, we're devastated. Then we get the real email from this guy, Mike Brown. And this is when Flavors had started to take off. Facebook was not public at this point. So we get
how many users for flavors at this point?
Maybe 120,000.
Okay.
And so Mike Jones emails us. He's very clear in the email. I still have the email. I should just frame it on my wall just to look at his motivation.
Yeah.
He's like, we really like what you guys are doing. We'd like you to come out to Facebook and meet. And if everything goes well, we'd like to give you an acquisition offer. So it was very clear what they wanted. Mm-hmm. We go out there, and this is how this whole situation works. We've done this so many times. You go out there, and you do a team presentation. So you go in there, and you're sitting around with. Now Zuckerberg wasn't there. It was like the chief product officer, the CTO, whatever, a bunch of the team, and you present. We did a presentation on flavors or whatever, and it went really well. The developers.
How long is the presentation? Let's just look
like an hour.
Yeah. Everybody's in hoodies.
Everybody's in hoodies. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they hammer you with questions, the group thing. Then you go off into your own conference room by yourself, and you get interviewed. So the developers go off to do code tests. And can you imagine doing a code test at Facebook? They have to write on whiteboards, and they have to code live as they're being timed in front of these developers. So the pressure is insane.
Wow.
Me, as a designer, I go in there shooting the breeze with everybody. I come in, Kate, who's the head of design at Facebook, comes in. And this is a lesson for, I always talk about this with college students, is that, number one, the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, has done more for me in my professional life than any other book I've ever read. Mm-hmm. And it's basically, it's be interesting by being interested. And that's by being interested in them. Like, this is uncomfortable for me. I don't like to just, because it goes against everything that I've read. I don't want to sit up here and talk about me. So I'm trying to bring this back to you guys. But as soon as Kate walks in, I don't go, hi, my name is Jack, and I'm really excited to be here. But I was like, hey, Kate, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh? Are you a Steelers fan? I am a Steelers fan. So I talked to her for an hour about the Steelers and Pittsburgh and going to Pirates games and seeing Huey Lewis in the news as my first concert at Three Rivers. And then at the end, she's like, I think I was supposed to ask you some questions. But this sounds pretty good to me, so yeah, we're good. Yeah. Let's do it.
Nice.
I was like, oh man, this is and then so I get to meet with the rest of the team, the developers, and they're like, and I'm like, hey guys, this is awesome. We were in the lunchroom, and there was an entire wall of beef jerky, which, anybody here a beef jerky fan? Every snack that you can possibly imagine at Facebook, it was an entire wall. It'd be like going to Sheetz and everything is free. So I must have had 52 green teas, 100 beef jerkies. I was jamming stuff in my pocket. And they're like, Dad, and I'm like, all right. And so we left that meeting, but our internal conversation was, do we really want to work for the man? Mm-hmm. And Facebook was struggling at that point with mobile, and people weren't sure what to do with Facebook. So we get the call from Mike. He says, we want to do the deal. It'll be roughly $12 million. And that was a slap in the face to us. Have no idea why, because we had met with Justin Schaefer, who had sold his company Hot Potato, which wasn't even out of beta. We had talked with him for like an hour at Facebook. He was telling us about how great it was there or whatever. Yeah. He sold his company for $20 million and didn't even do anything. So we're like, we should at least get as much as Justin did. Okay. Dumb. So the shares were at $25 a share. So we have gotten $12 million at $25 a share. I think I checked it. It was at $175 a share. So we're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, was it 7 times? So that's almost an $80 million deal.
Ouch.
Like I'd be riding in a golden pony right now. Just my wife would. And so we said no. And what happened was when we said no, our partner Rob, I think he was bothered by it. Mm-hmm. And so he went out to Facebook a couple weeks later to visit some of his friends that were designers out there. And Kate, who was the design director, when she wants someone on staff, she will get them. So she knew Rob was there, and it was like she smelled blood in the water. So she clears everybody out of this room and just brings Zuckerberg in. So it's just Zuckerberg and Rob. And he goes, do you want to build websites for the rest of your life, or do you want to change the world? And well, who's going to say, well, I want to build websites. So Rob said yes. And Rob, I can estimate Rob probably got $1 million in shares at 25 a share. So that $1 million is now $8 million or whatever. But what happened was, that was devastating to us as partners because we felt like Rob went around us and took a side deal. So a week later, Rob calls me and he says, hey, Kate wants to offer you the same deal that she gave me. And this is where there's a little book called Wooden by John Wooden. I don't know if anybody ever read that book. It's a little blue book. And in that book, there's a line in there that haunts me and guides me, and it said, the softest pillow at night is a clean conscience. And I was like, I could take this deal and screw my partners over, totally ruin the business, and it just so happens that they started this business with money. Their dad committed suicide, and it was a couple $100,000 of their dad's insurance money that started this company. Wow. So I said, Rob, I was like, I can't. And I talked to Marissa about it, and we talked about it, and I just couldn't do it. And then I didn't tell Jonathan, didn't tell David. A couple months later, he offers me the same thing again. Wow. And I got mad at this point. I was like, why would you do this to me again? Why would you, I told you how I felt. Why would you want to do this to me again? Yeah. And I don't regret it, because if I were sitting up here on stage and I could say, oh, I sold a company to Facebook, or I worked at Facebook, and you guys would be like, oh, that's so cool. But I knew that I hurt two people, and not only them, but their family. Who cares? Like, so that kind of cemented that from then on. Like, I can be loyal to a fault, but I just couldn't. And I don't do that to be like, oh, how great Jack is. It just felt like it was, and you guys all agree with me. Like, no one's saying, like, should have screwed him over, Jack. Yeah. It's just, but when you're in the moment, once you have a price, then it's just negotiating. Because if you can be bought, then it's just the price. Yeah. So.
That's so good. That's so good. So Flavors ends up shuttering?
This is where, if you take this route, if you take the Silicon Valley route, and it's either in business, when you're starting a business, and you take the investor route, what it does is, it's like this graph where it's super exciting, really fast, and then it starts to get more painful and more painful and more painful and more painful. Because now you're beholden to the investors. Your customers are really the investors because they want $1 billion return. And you make decisions based on making sure that they get their money back. And it'd be like if I got a mortgage and you guys all like high-fived and we cheered, and I just raised $300,000 from PNC. It's like, nah, you didn't. You actually owe them the money back. Right. I'm actually a PNC customer, by the way. All the businesses are through PNC, so just saying. But you raise that money, and it's real exciting. And we were spending money. And you also have a very distorted view of money. Like, we paid our CTO $210,000 a year. And because we really thought we needed to pay that CTO that much money. And we paid a PR company like $25,000 a month to get us in all these magazines, which was a big waste of money. Going to South by Southwest, buying all that stuff, getting on Bloomberg TV or whatever. It was all just smoke and mirrors. So, but if you do it the other way and you don't raise money, it's really hard, and then it gets more exciting and more exciting and more exciting because you own it and you're not beholden to anybody. So when people say, in Silicon Valley, they'll call that lifestyle business, or you're just doing it. Well, yeah, I think we all want a good lifestyle. It's not a very good lifestyle.
But they mean that negatively.
It's a little bootstrapped little.
How cute.
Yeah. And so.
So do you wish you had done it differently? Do you wish you had skipped the whole?
Well, now I don't ever build a business with the raising money thing. I mean, it's tempting, but for me, it's about that slow grind, knowing that you understand your customers, knowing that you're doing things methodically, that you understand what you're doing, and not getting a glorified loan that gives you fake success. Because Snapchat raised, I don't know, a couple $100 million. Evan Spiegel paid himself $570 million, and they lost $170 million last year. And nobody got bonuses. Twitter was losing $100 million a quarter, and they raised all that money. Uber is losing money hand over fist. Like, we glorify these companies as being so successful, but very few of them actually become profitable. So it's kind of a big smoke and mirror show.
Yeah. So at some point, you and Marissa are still up in Hoboken.
So still up in Hoboken.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you decide to make the move back to Central PA.
Yeah, so we sold flavors to a company called Moo. Have you guys ever bought business cards from Moo over in London? We ended up selling it to them. They ended up running it for a few years and then shutting it down. That's just how it goes. And so we sold that company, started another e-commerce company called Goodsie, which is an e-commerce platform. So if you ever heard of Shopify, it was we started at the same time. Now they're like $1 billion public company. But so when we started Goodsie, I realized I hadn't gone into the city in years. So we just wanted to move back here to be close to my family, and we absolutely love it here.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And was that like, you were connected to that College Humor Vimeo Mafia in New York? You have Silicon Valley contacts. Did it feel like you were leaving behind some of the startup dream when you moved to Central PA, or did you feel like, no, I can do it here, I can do it?
I didn't tell anybody for a long time. Everybody still thought I lived in New York.
Oh, okay. like embarrassed to tell people that?
I was, and I would, oh man, it was so, I felt like Larry David a lot of times, but I was on this digital advisory board for Amex. And so they would bring in, you'd be sitting in a round table, and so you'd have the head of global marketing for here, and then you'd have the head of, whatever for Amex. And everybody there was from New York. I was the only one traveling 5 hours from Pennsylvania, trying to act all cool, I just hopped on the subway and came over. And just kind of played that up for a while. But yeah, I played that New York, Pennsylvania game for a while, but then it just got, but I knew I was kind of burning the ships when I left. I knew I had to be on my own if I was going to come here.
Yeah. So, that's a consequential decision. So,
it
had to be, family and different lifestyle in Central PA, but you still wanted to start new businesses and start new things here. So, how did you weigh the pros and cons there?
I think that lifestyle is where it starts first. My sister is in PR. She's very good, and as soon as she left to go out on her own, she started getting all these offers. And she had this really compelling offer from Casper, the mattress thing, to be the head of PR there. She's like, they're going to pay me this, and I said, well, what do you, because she had already been at home. And I said, what do you want your lifestyle to be? Do you want to commute into the city every single day? And she's like, no. And I said, do you want to stay at home and work from home? And then when you have a kiddo that you can be at home and not have to worry about commuting? She's like, yeah. I'm like, well, then it's an easy choice that if you start with lifestyle first and then make the decision on money or opportunity and that stuff, things just become a lot clearer. And she's glad that she did that, I think. And so she gets to be at home.
You made similar lifestyle decisions there.
Yeah.
That's good. So Goodsie is still going.
Well, that's the other story.
Okay.
So this acquisition, the Facebook thing, the MySpace thing, that was one of so many conversations. Because when you raise this money, now you have pressure to sell. So with Goodsie, we had conversations with Kleiner Perkins, who, one of the biggest on what's it called, Sand Hill Road or whatever in Silicon Valley, where like Al Gore's a partner and stuff.
Okay.
Right, so you're sitting in a meeting with Bing Gordon, who started EA.
Wow.
And I think he was on some kind of drug. Like, he was acting really weird. Like, he's an interesting dude. He kept going on and on about white text on blue background. He kept saying, that's white text on a blue background. That's white text on a, like, what are you saying? And so then they wanted us to, we hadn't shut down Flavors at the time. They wanted to invest in Goodsie, but they wanted us to shut down Flavors. We didn't do it, so we said no. And then after that, it was Yahoo, and then it was Square, and then it was Squarespace. And you go through these long processes, like the Square process. Square wanted to get into e-commerce, and we had like 3 or 4 month long conversations, interviewed all the team, did all the code tests. We had hour-long conversations on the phone. They go through all of your books. So when you're doing these deals, they go through every single line of your financial statement. So they know if you're in an offensive position or a defensive position. And like that happened at Twitter, where we went there. We did all-day meetings. You do 10 back-to-back meetings, and then they go through your books, and then they say yes or no.
Wow.
And so we did that with just so many. And then Goodsie got to a point where we were just all tired. And we were tired of
that sounds exhausting.
the game. Yeah. And it was a lot of work, and working 80-hour week. I mean, just all the time. And so the last year, we had the same conversations with Etsy, with Goodsie. So we did 6 months of conversations with Etsy. Went there for meetings, all-day meetings, same thing, team presentation, individual things, over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And this deal was going through. And we got all executive approval. It was going to be a great deal for everybody. We were going to go on to their pattern team, which is their store builder team. And so we don't hear from them. And we don't hear from them, we don't hear from them, we don't hear from them. And then finally we see on the news that Etsy had lost $120 million that quarter. They fired their CEO, and we're like, oh no. Yeah. And this time we had shut the business down. Okay. So no payroll. Yeah. And this is where I think I want to get real with you guys tonight, that it's not, if you get into this game for money, you're really going to have a hard time. Because you have to love the process and hate the process at the same time, but have that hate-love for it, that you can go through all these things that when we weren't getting paid and there was no payroll and you're just putting money on credit cards, knowing that this deal is going to go through. And Marissa's coming into my office saying, are we going to have money for groceries? And I'm saying, I don't know. Just wait until the deal goes through. And then when I get the call from Jonathan saying the deal's off, and you just sit there and you're just paralyzed. And I don't think people are honest enough in this whole world, and maybe it happens in church world too. And in corporate world, like, we all project this image of like, we have it all together. Like, we know what we're doing. We're cool, and we have a title. And we all walk around like walking LinkedIn profiles, right? It's like, well, did you know this about me? And like I was hesitant when you first asked me to do this. I'm like, well, I'm not worth $100 million. Like, why would you want me to come up here and talk about this? As I thought through it, Marissa's like, you just need to be real with them. And the real part of this is that it is a grind. It is a physical and emotional toll that not many people can actually take. And people just walk around with this facade of everything's together. It's not together. It is from one minute to the next. Like right now, I'm pretty excited. I'll walk out there, sit in the car, and be like, okay, I need to do this. Everything sucks. I'm horrible. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm a complete does anybody ever here feel like a fraud?
Imposter syndrome?
I think everybody does. Yeah. We have no idea. Nobody knows what we're doing, but everybody pretends like we know what we're doing. Right. So in those situations, if you don't have a strong why, if you don't have a strong reason why you're doing something, that stuff like that will just throw you off. Yeah. And when I get calls from friends who are like, going to start a business, buddy. I have an idea. Snapchat for hamsters. And I'm like, are you sure you want to do Snapchat for hamsters? Are you passionate about hamsters? Not really. Because the first time you get a no from an investor or no from a customer, are you going to keep building that hamster app? Probably not. And so while this is happening, I'm building 2 companies at the same time, knowing that it was 3 companies. So knowing that this one is probably going down the tubes, Marissa coming into me saying there's no money in the accounts, the credit cards are maxed out, kids need diapers, like everything's on fire, we could lose the house.
Right.
I mean, it's real.
That's real
And
life.
it is scary, and you feel like you're in the middle of what it feels like is, it feels like you're in the middle of the ocean, and you think nobody is going to save me. No human is going to save me, right?
Yeah.
And once you get to that point, you're like, I have 2 options. I can either go upstairs, curl up into a ball, cry, and wait till this all goes away, which it won't, because as soon as I wake up, it's back to reality. Or I can just keep going, just keep fighting, because my family is my why. My why is that I have this disease called entrepreneurship, and I can't help it but create things. And I literally think if I physically stopped myself, that my brain would take over like AI, and I would just
Right. Start coding.
I would just like start doing stuff. And so to get through that was super, super rough. And I'm on the other side of it, but it was the hardest time. It was the first time that I was truly tested. And Gary Vaynerchuk talks all the time about how he's scared that the economy has been so great for a while that nobody getting into startup world has been punched in the face yet. Like really punched. And I was punched in the face in 2008 with buying the house and not selling the one company, losing millions of dollars.
Yep.
So, but when you get punched in the face, you realize that that dog that's so scary doesn't have any teeth. And that, wow, how did I get through that? Yeah. And you just do. Yeah. And that's really it. I mean, I think that's... Yeah. I think that's
that's good.
The moral of the story.
Live to tell the tale.
Yeah.
I do want to hit School of Action before we go to our lightning round and some Q&A. So tell everybody what School of Action is, because that's one of the things you're working on still.
So when I first moved here, I started talking to some Penn State students, and I love teaching. Like, I love working with college students. I think because it's such a great time in their life that there's so much possibility, and there's not, I would say, not a lot of responsibility, because there really isn't. Come on, like when you start having kids and a mortgage and all that stuff, like there's just so much that you can do, and so your risk tolerance is nowhere near what it is when you have a family and kids and mortgages and stuff. And so I started meeting with these students, and I was like, I just want to get together and talk about real stuff, like how it really is. Not in your classroom where they give you a school project and your teacher who's never built a business is going to give you a grade, which there is no grade in business. If I were to get a grade in business and I got paid based on whether I got an A or a B, like that'd be awesome. Your grade is your customers giving you money. Yeah. So I started meeting with students in the McDonald's basement, which sounds cooler than it is, because it's actually a really nice basement. Have you guys been in the downtown McDonald's? It's not really a basement. It's actually just downstairs in McDonald's. But we called it Fight Club. They called it Fight Club. I don't know why, because it was like raw. And I was like, you guys want to know the real deal about what it really takes? And so we started meeting. That 5 turned into 10, turned into 20, turned into 30. We were a common place. We had 2 groups of 30 students. And we would walk them through business that they were not getting in business class. First time that they would show up, or anytime I walk into a college classroom, I put $100 on the table, and I was like, "You guys have 60 seconds to tell me why you should give me that. I should give you that $100." And they're like, and I'm like, "All right, go." And some people start writing, some people are just like, and they don't do anything, right? They freeze. So then I go around the room, and I don't ask them, does anybody want to share? I just pick them. I'm like, you, Bobby, whatever your name is, Billy, Steve, Jenny. Tell me what you wrote down. Oh, well, and these answers are amazing. they go, oh, well, if you give me that money, then I'm going to be super happy. I could buy food with it, groceries this week, and you will know that you had fed a college student. That's terrible. I'm not giving you the $100. Second person. I went to a business fraternity one time, and some guy literally said, you give me that $100, and I'll let you be my wingman for a night, talk to girls at bars. And I'm like, I said, listen, Chad, probably. I said, I haven't talked to a girl in 20 years. Yeah. So you don't want me to be the wingman because I'm super awkward. And I'll probably start talking about like property taxes, like being high in State College. And so Chad tells me that, and then somebody always goes, I'll take that $100. And it's usually someone in finance. I'll take that $100, I put it in the stock market, and I will give you a X amount of return in 5 years, and that'll be great. And I'm like, nah, maybe, but that sounds pretty risky. All the risk is on me. There's none on you. What do you have to risk? So then I go in and I start talking about marketing. I'm like, look, you guys made 2 fundamental mistakes. Number 1, you didn't ask me any questions. If I'm your customer, wouldn't you want to know a little bit about who you're trying to get money from? I'm like, if you would have asked me, it was Valentine's Day. If you would have asked me if I was married, I would have said yes. And you would have said, did you buy your wife anything for Valentine's Day? I would have said, absolutely not. You said, I'll take that $100. I'll go buy the flowers. I will hand deliver it with chocolates and whatever you want. I do a singing telegram for $100. And what do you say? I would immediately give him that $100. Second thing was your pitch. Everything in your pitch was about you. Yeah. It was I, and we call that the case of the I's. So every pitch was, if you give me this, I will get this, I will get this. And I say, if I'm your customer, I don't really give a crap about you. Like, do you guys really have a soft spot in your heart for Wendy's? Or Chick-fil-A? Well, we love Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, we love Chick-fil-A tonight.
Right? We love Chick-fil-A, but we don't really care. We think that they care. So imagine if I would have met Marissa for the first time and said, hey, my name's Jack, and I would love to get married and have kids and live in Happy Valley. First of all me and my benefit. Second of all, there was no stage of offers. There was no give value first, and I call that a low threshold offer. A low threshold offer is, why don't you go out, we'll go to a movie. We went to see Mission Impossible 1. That's how old we are. Yeah. then, go on a second date and whatever. And then finally, after all this thing, then I go for the sale, which is where you marry this weirdo who's going to put you through all this garbage.
You got to work up to that.
Right. So that's the kind of stuff I love talking with college students. So as I would go into these college classrooms, I'm like, nobody's really teaching them business principles. Like there's some professors in there that I love, and I call them the Rebel Alliance because they know there's a problem and they try really hard. Yeah. So we took that from the college students and we took that online and we started training students all over the world. And we took that same platform and now have made it a platform. So now anybody can take this theory of, instead of giving you a whole bunch of information and asking you to apply that information on some fake project, we say, go do this. So we have missions in the School of Action on any topic. So if you started a school for sports, you could do that. Or I'm starting a school for design, I could do that. Very small prompt. If I say, just like the $100 bill prompt, I didn't say, I'm going to give you guys a 4-hour lecture on marketing. I said, sell me it. Tell me why I should give you the $100. And then I give you the insight. So you have to take action first. Yeah. So if I said, go make 100 sales calls, and then come back and we'll talk, and I'll give you feedback on that. That's the way that you learn. It's not about giving you all this information. So that's our theory going forward, and we feel like we could teach any topic around that. So that's the platform. We're launching our first school today, actually. Copywriting school called Crazy Tony's Copy. That's my partner, Anthony. We call him Crazy Tony. And then mine is going to be called Design to Sell, which was actually a HGTV show in 2004, I learned. Oh. But I don't
still able to get the title?
Right. Yeah. So that's my passion. And then we have another company called Suzette Collection, which is a e-commerce company which sells women's basics, which don't even ask me how I got into this. It's camis, tank tops, leggings. I know more than I should know about leggings. It's a consultant client that I had. He has a $20 million offline business selling these things to wholesalers, and he sells millions of dollars of this per month to 3,000 different retailers. No online presence. He's like, look, we'll partner in this. I'll give you a percentage of whatever revenue, build the whole online store. So we've launched the whole online store. I've trained all their warehouse. I've done photo shoots, hired makeup artists. I had no idea. That's the other thing. Just if you don't know what you're doing, you'll figure it out. He said, do you want to do this? And I'm like, sure. Yeah. He's like, well, we need to get models first. And I'm like, I have no idea. And so I picked models, and that was weird. And we did a photo shoot in New York, and that was also weird.
You should ask Chad to help you with that.
Right. Marissa goes, you're going to be real awkward. You're real awkward around people, especially models. And I didn't look at anybody the whole time. I just kept my eyes down the whole time. I was like, I am married. She's like, they're not even interested in you anyway. So that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah, and the SaaS thing is School of Action.
Yeah. That's launching soon. Yeah, I mean that's ready to go, but we're launching slowly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So final question then, lightning round. Your impressions of the startup scene in Central PA, Happy Valley.
I think it's awesome. I've met some really smart people around here. I think that's what's great about this area is like you never know who you're going to meet. Like when we first started going to the gym at PYP, Marissa started going to PYP and got to meet Jamie Beswick. It's like Jamie Beswick is like the Tony Hawk of BMX.
Right. And
just to be around someone like that who's also an entrepreneur. And then to meet why am I forgetting his name? I'm so bad with names. This other guy who went through like some of the big Silicon Valley incubators. He's a big investor. There's just so many interesting people, and it's just a great place to be because there's not this arrogance of New York. I think that happens. Everybody's so cool and
down to
nice.
earth.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So here's some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Short answer. A lot of them are yes or no. Team or single founder?
Do I like to be on a team or do I like to be?
Yeah. Which one?
I like the team.
Team.
Not like Dave Ramsey where he says I only ship that doesn't sales a partnership. I don't agree with that. Dave.
Okay. Oh. Okay. I haven't heard that one. Business plan? Yes or no?
Mike Tyson said everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. That's my thought on that.
That's good. That's good. Crowdfunding? Yes or no?
Yeah.
You like that? Good.
Yeah.
Co-working spaces?
I was in one in Hoboken. The only thing that's tough is that, like if I can't wear my pajamas in there. So that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. You'd rather co-work in your living room, right?
Yeah.
Prototype user validation.
This is a huge one for me. And we were talking about, where's Joel? We were talking about this. Joel has a gold mine on his hands with lawn care. He asked a question on Facebook and said, who here has questions about their lawn? And you got 150 comments? That is, what's that? It keeps going.
It sure does.
Right? That's the key in all of this. Anytime anybody comes up to me and says, I have an idea for a business, I say, first of all, my opinion doesn't matter, so don't ask me for my opinion. The only opinion that matters is the markets. Yeah. So you need to spend the next 6 weeks interviewing as many different people in that market. And if you go in with a solution looking for a problem, you're going to have a problem. Because you're going to be like, look at this thing. Do you want water? And be like, I'm not thirsty. Are you sure? Because this is super good water, and I paid a developer a lot of money to make this. My friend's cousin's brother built this for me. Please do it, because I told my wife I was going to be successful. You can't do that. So if you go in there with an open mind to this market, and you're asking that market, and you're not asking them leading questions like, if I made something like this, would you do that? Because you're asking them something they do in the future. You only ask about what they're currently doing or what they've done in the past. So with lawn care, if I was starting that business, I would go to my target market, and I would say, what's the most frustrating thing? I'm asking for stories. I'm not looking for binary yes or no answers. What's the most frustrating part about caring for your lawn? And I could go on for an hour, right? So I'm definitely in that market. And then you're saying, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you, how would that solve, how could you solve your problem? So I'm looking for stories and narratives so that I have the raw materials and those pain points so that when I'm either developing the product based on those problems or developing the marketing needs to be based on the painful problem, not how great you are. You are not the solution. Lawn care and lawn knowledge is the solution. You just happen to provide it. Just like when I say someone who is an artist, your business is not being an artist. Your business is the selling of that art. And if you're not good at the selling of that art, it won't work. So I hammer that home all the time, that if your biggest competitive advantage will always be you know your market better than the other one. So with my market, with college students and teachers and stuff like that, we've had thousands. I mean, I have 2,000. We ran this school for 3 years, so I have probably 2,000 or 3,000 responses of raw data. So when we do that marketing, we know exactly how to get to that painful problem. Because if you ran a Facebook ad that says, Joel's marketing consultant, call now, right? Which if you guys open Town and Gown magazine, it's called Tombstone Marketing. It's basically name, phone number, and address. No value. But if you ran an ad in Town and Gown and you said, do you hate your wife, or do you hate the fact that your wife bugs you about the brown grass every single day, every single weekend? Or to the wives, you would say, are you sick and tired of bugging her? You know what I mean? Or maybe the wife is the one who mows the grass. Either way, he's advertising based on the pain.
Tell them about the cheese. Your line about.
Oh, you gotta have the cheese. I always talk about where's the cheese, because if you are getting a mouse to come out of the hole, there has to be cheese there. And if there's something scary, if there's a cat outside of that hole, which is them scared of spending their money, but there's some cheese there, they'll come out of the hole. Now, this feels very manipulative, but if you're doing something that actually adds value, it's okay, right? So you're trying to help people with their lawn, but you need to give them enough cheese that they're going to come out of their hole, scroll, and actually stop and click on the ad. So with your business, it's just, and this is where I get going, where I'm just like, you start off with very low threshold offers, where it's not buy my services, it's come out for a free, or I'll come out for a free lawn care evaluation, or I'm going to be holding a Facebook Live Q&A. Just show up. It's very low threshold. It's not a lot of commitment on their part. And then once you get them your email address, then you can move. It's called ascension, which is funny to say that in a church, but you're moving up this ladder of value and offers. So you go from low threshold, which is raise your hand, click on a link is the lowest threshold. Then it gets up to maybe give me your email address, a little higher threshold. Right. Call this number, even a higher threshold. Buy my thing, pretty high, to become a platinum member for $4,000 a month. You can't just go, I can't go right for Marissa to marry me. I've got to ascend her up the marketing value ladder.
And you're building trust, and you're building a relationship all along the way for why they should want to give you take that next step.
So Joe would be the go-to. If when I think about lawn care, I think about you, you've done your job. And I think about me buying something from you, it was almost a thank you to you versus you sold me. Because nobody wants to be sold, everybody wants to buy. I want your service, and if they say things like, I want to throw money at you, that's when you know you've found it. So if you can hold your breath the longest, if we're competing and I go to monetize too early, you're going to beat me if you can hold your breath and not monetize right away. And you can build up a community of 500,000 people, and then Chemlon comes to you and said, we'd love to do a sponsored ad. Well, you say, well, it'll be $10,000 per post. Now we're talking. Now you got a business. So that's it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Really good. That's solid gold right there. All right, couple more. Less intense. So museum or rock concert?
Rock concert.
All right. Cats or dogs?
Neither.
Steal that. Hamsters on Snapchat. That's
hamsters.
Yeah. Beer or wine?
Beer.
Sushi or tacos?
Tacos.
All right. Very good. That's good. Can we thank Jack? Yeah, this is great. so much wisdom, and if you hear that, Jack has a lot of wisdom to share about building a business, growing an audience, how to take this idea and validate it, and then build it into something. So we want to leave some time here for some Q&A. So if you have a question, we'll just call on you, and we have time for a few of these. So we'll just kind of raise your hand in the crowd and go from there. So
does anybody have a business that they're actively working on right now? I know you do, Chris.
Yep. Julie?
In the tie?
Yeah.
Yes.
What's your name?
Paul Mazin.
Paul, what are you working on?
It's actually luxury accessories.
Nice.
Yeah, just talked to a manufacturer yesterday.
Yeah?
So it's moving finally.
So what's your biggest kind of frustration, or where's your biggest kind of obstacle you're kind of working through now?
Honestly, at this point, and I actually just overcame that obstacle, is finding a manufacturer.
Really?
And getting in. Yeah, because they are very limited and they can't take on everybody.
Right.
So you really have to go through a process just to get kind of accepted is the way to do it. And that's kind of what's been going on for the last few months. But
So who's your market?
it's actually different. It's called they're calling it the Henrys. It's high earners. They're not necessarily rich yet. High earners, not rich yet. It's a younger demographic because
Yeah.
that's kind of changing the luxury market
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. Before it was a lot of elderly, wealthy people
Yeah.
that were purchasing these things, and nowadays it's shifting towards a younger demographic.
So like 30 to
Yeah,
40s?
Around 25 to 40, probably.
And what kind of products are there? Like watches and jewelry and
Right now, it's a wallet.
wallet?
Getting into watches and jewelry, yes. What moving into once I officially start. That's the big part now.
So what channels, like what marketing channels are you going to be going after first?
It's going to be all online.
Online. So you have a website,
Working
and
on
then
it. Yeah.
how are you going to get the word out?
See, that's what I'm trying to figure out. That's why I'm here. So
Yeah.
I'm learning every step of the way, and I spend too much time sitting around trying to learn everything.
Yeah.
And it kind of got frustrating. So I got to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm fine with not knowing how to do this.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do it, and I'll figure it out. That's my mentality right now.
Right.
So we'll see where it goes. This is kind of the test. Gonna send out a pre-order after I get, a price quote for production.
Yeah.
And see how people react before I put a lot of money into it.
I think Instagram would be a huge channel with that market, and that photography is going to be huge. And I think it would be interesting. And so this is where I'm still getting my head around things too, especially with retail and e-commerce, because with this clothing company that we're doing, what we've found has worked really well for our market is Facebook Messenger has been really interesting. So we ran a contest. So what we did is, so you know who your competitors are. So if you go into Facebook Ad Insights, have you ever been to Facebook Ad Insights? If you just Google Facebook Ad Insights, what they'll do is they have the whole Facebook user base on this thing. It's free to use, and you can type in you can search through the demographics and stuff like that. So if I were you, I'd go in there and start typing in your competitors into people that like these pages, right? So if they like the Bulgaris or they like the Louis Vuittons or whatever, then you type those pages in, and then over on the right-hand side, you'll start seeing all the demographics of those people, their income. This is where it's like, when all this stuff about Facebook data was in the news, I'm like, please don't take my data away. I need that data to spy on all you guys. But you get that data, and you can see what industries they are, what other pages they like, and you can start seeing which audiences you can target on Facebook that are going to be the most similar to yours. So if you started out with an ad campaign that was very low threshold, and maybe it was just to get them to play a video, you're not, with these initial ad campaigns, for us, when we ran this giveaway, we said, you're going to win a pair of leggings for free, right? Who wants a pair of so soft you won't want to take them off leggings? Isn't that great? It rhymes. I know who my market is. There's two different markets that I was experimenting with. One I called the Logan Valley Mall market, or could call it the Nittany Mall market, or the other one was the Short Hills Mall, which is in Jersey, where there's the Fendis and the city, right? The fashionistas, I called them. I tested against those two markets. So the mall audience was the Forever 21s, the Rue 21s, those mall. If they're not in the mall, then if they're not in the Nittany Valley Mall or not in the Logan Valley Mall, they're not in that market. And so run two of those ads, very small ad spend, probably $50 a day, right? And I ran that for 7 days. The ad was, who would you like to win who wouldn't want to win that? I didn't say, do you want to buy a pair of leggings? I don't care about that. I want them to raise their hand and say yes. So it was a Facebook Messenger ad where it said, you want to win a pair of leggings? Click this one, send message now, and say, I want a pair of leggings. So there's a marketing tactic in there where if you can get someone to actually say it, it's very NLP, linguistic programming. Like it's very like when I say to you if I'm selling you something. So what we're going to do, Steve, after you sell me that drum set, is that you're going to give me that drum. I'm already telling you what you're going to do. So when I say I want you to say I want leggings. So we had in 7 days 400 leads, right? We were paying about $1 per lead. Pretty cheap, right? So if our average transaction is $45, we're paying $1 per lead. So we're doing and our cost per good sold is maybe $12. I mean that's a great ad spend. So if I'm putting in $1, I'm getting 10. How many more dollars am I going to spend? So that's why you see, and I have friends that are spending $100,000 a month on Facebook. They can't spend enough. They get limited by the ad spend because if I know that every dollar I spend is going to be 10. So with that, we ran that campaign. We got 500 leads for $1. The open rates on Facebook Messenger were 90%. So when we built up all the leads, we used an app called ManyChat, which automates all this stuff. When we sent out the broadcast to say, hey, Sally from Idaho won the leggings, and by the way, as a consolation prize, we're offering 10% off leggings or whatever. And I just threw that in. I didn't even expect to get any sales or whatever. 90% of those people opened it. On email, an average open rate is maybe 2%, like if you're lucky. With Facebook Messenger, it was 90% because marketers haven't ruined that channel yet. We will eventually, and you'll get tired and you'll shut it off. We haven't ruined text messaging yet. We'll ruin that too. But that test, now my partner Steven's like, why didn't we get any sales? And we got some sales. But I said, you don't understand. I don't care now because now I can retarget those people. All I wanted them to do is raise their hand. I found that I could acquire the mall audience a lot cheaper than I could the fashionista audience. Now, maybe that fashionista audience is going to convert higher. If I have to spend $2 on them, but they're going to convert at 30% of those people will buy something, then that's what I want. So that it's just an experiment. So when you're running these little ad campaigns, don't get all overwhelmed about, I'm wasting money. Just look at it as an experiment and say, I'm going to spend $10 a day, and I'm going to make a really cool video ad with my product. Something cool. I mean, you should be able to do it on your own if you have a good iPhone or whatever that shoots quality video. Maybe you have a friend that does video. And just get people to like it and engage with it. You can now that they've raised their hand, now you can retarget them. You can serve them ads again. Do you ever notice when you click on a link and then you start seeing that ad everywhere all over the internet? It's because I'm retargeting you. And I want you to see my ad no matter where you go. And when we have chips in our brains, you're going to see that too. But
going to ruin that one too.
Right. So if you ran that experiment, then you see the people that are raising their hand. Then you're seeing your true leads, not customers. And then from those leads, then you see who are the buyers. And then once you get the buyers, now you have the data on who those buyers are. I know when we were running School of Action as a entrepreneur training, I knew my market was male, 18 to 24, business school, not yet graduated, no income really, from from middle of the country or whatever, and I could just target. I knew that, so I could just put money in so that it's not a gamble. There's a difference between advertising and marketing. That billboard that you'll see out there that just says "Call Joe's lawyer" thing is a complete waste of money, because if Joe spends $1,000 on that billboard, he has no way to track who actually found him on that billboard. How can he calculate his return? But if Joe has a coupon code on there that says you'll get 10% off your first visit or come in for a free consultation, then he can start tracking and say, okay, well, I got 100 leads from that. I converted at 10%, which means one of those leads, 10 of those leads. I'm so bad with math. So 10 of those leads. And then one of those ended up being a $30,000 deal. Well, I just made 30 times on my money. How many more billboards am I going to do? Now, you're kind of limited by billboard space, but you're not by internet ad spend. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you can find that right and test, my opinion doesn't matter. You test this and be like, well, that video completely flopped. It's not a failure. It's just, it's a redirection. Every time a pilot is flying a plane, he's not like, I'm off course. I'm a total horrible pilot. I'm giving up. This is terrible. Just like when kids learn to walk.
That's good. Really good. Would you recommend he look at like an Etsy, eBay, like one of these other places to send the wallets? And
there are marketplaces that, not eBay, not Etsy, but there is another one that's like a high-end marketplace, and I'm forgetting the name of it now, but there is like a kind of social marketplace for like higher-end stuff. One of the companies that I worked with, one of our investors, Dave Tisch, started this company called Spring, and we did some of the early mobile mock-ups for them. They are like a virtual mobile shopping mall. So they partnered with J. Crew and a lot of these higher fashion brands, and so you can go on there and they have one-of-a-kind items that you can get. It's gorgeous, the design, how they did this. Mm-hmm. But that's their market. So I think if you can start testing these ad creatives, knowing that you're going to lose money, that's okay. You just want to find out who those people are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, and email me or we can talk after, and I can go on for another 7 hours. But I would do that. I get on a roll.
We have time for one more?
Yeah.
One more question?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
It sounds like as you were starting all your businesses, you also had a very successful life with your wife and your children. Mm-hmm. How did you maintain that? Because that's something just, even since 2007, I've worked on average 70 hours a week. Mm-hmm. Between working or schooling and both combined. You obviously have done that too, because you shared that a little bit, how you were in Hoboken, you work 9 to 5 and then come home and work too. How did you maintain that and not lose your marriage and not lose your household?
That has been a journey. That's a great question. It's something I take super seriously. In the beginning, when I first left Vimeo, I was like, I can get to the point where it's damaging, where I can work and work and work and work. Like, nobody can ever accuse me of not working hard enough. My problem is I need to throttle back. So the first thing I did was, because it wasn't working, Marissa's like, this is not working. First one was I have a stopping time. For now, right now, it's 5:30. It may change as our lifestyle changes, the kids get older. Right now, it's 5:30. Dad is done with work. Then at 8 o'clock, it starts back up for me. So we have dinner, put the kids to bed. Now, Marissa works on her blog, and I work on my projects. We're just used to that rhythm now. We've gotten in a really good rhythm. And I take one day off completely. That was an Andy Stanley talk that I listened to about taking the Sabbath day. So I take one day off where I don't do any work, and it's like a vacation for me. I don't worry. And then the other things that I do just recently in the past year is that I'm dividing up my life into 4 different categories: body, being, balance, and business. So if I look at my body, am I working out and keeping my body healthy and my mind healthy, which is super important when you're in this world. So for each day, I give myself a point if I've worked out. I give myself a point if I've eaten healthy or had a green smoothie that day. It could be anything for you, but like any kind of healthy thing that you're doing. And then in being, for me, as a Christian, am I spending time with God? Am I praying? Am I reading the Bible? Am I meditating? Like those things, super important to me as part of that. And then balance, which is family. So we've implemented date nights. We do it every other week. I'd like to do it every week. It just gets super expensive with babysitters. But without question, usually Thursday nights, every other week. Eventually it'll be every week. Date nights for Marissa and I to connect. And then knowing, have you ever read The 5 Love Languages? Knowing that book and knowing, like today, Thursday is gift day for me, for Marissa. So every Thursday I do something for her. So today I go to Wegmans, I buy some sunflowers, these big sunflowers, and I get her, because we're on this like crazy diet right now, I get her this like almond peanut butter ice cream. She loved that. And her love language is gifts. And my love language is words. So that alone, I mean, that's had a huge impact. Another book called Love and Respect, which had a huge impact on us. And then, so that's balance. And then business, which is in each business, having my key 4 things that I'm going to do each week. There's a million things that I'm going to do, but how can I write down? So I have a thing called a general's tent. I do it on Sunday, and I sit down on a Sunday, and I write down, okay, how did I do in body this week? How did I do in being? How did I do in, and a lot of times I did not so great. And then I adjust. And so each morning, I'm waking up at 6 a.m., I'm writing down in my journal about these things. And that's what keeps me sane. If I can throw up emotionally and mentally in the morning and get it all out of there about what triggered me the day before, what am I frustrated about, and what am I committed to doing about it in the next 48 hours, like these are those things and habits that I've built into my life over and over again. And I screw them up all the time. But it's that continuous, it's just like with, well, I wouldn't call it ad spending, but Marissa would punch me if I said that. But it's optimization. But it's really about thinking the things that worked and the things that didn't work. And I found that if I can speak her love language, if I can make the time, and now I think one of the things I'm working on now is like just being more present. A lot of the times when I'm at work, I'm thinking about being with my family, and when I'm with my family, I'm thinking about being at work. I'm sure we all struggle with that. That's something I still struggle with to this day. And Marissa knows. She's like, you're not present. You're not here right now. It's because I'm thinking about other things. And I think the other thing is trying to be more honest with people and struggles and things that I'm going through. Like last week was a horrible week. Like it was so stressful. Going through the launch of this new e-commerce company, also launching School of Action at the same time. You know, our first goal of this e-commerce company is 200 orders a day, and we're at 1 order a day. And it's super scary because I've never done e-commerce before. But if you can build in those habits, then you can schedule these things because you can't go willy-nilly. If you say, we're going to do this at this time, and then you have that built into your schedule, you can plan around it. Because if you just say, I'll get to it, you won't ever get to it because there's too many things for us to do. I'm still working on it, but if you can get in those habits, I think that's the thing that's saved us. Yeah.
Great stuff. Great. Thank you, Jack. Can we thank Jack again for sharing wisdom and experience with us? It's been great. This is really exactly what I hoped our startup grind would be, hearing the stories and the real talk and the ups and downs. So thank you, Jack, for sharing with us. That kind of brings an end to the program portion. I want to invite you guys to stick around and keep meeting people here. Thanks again to our sponsors, PNC, Investors First, and UPS, and Good Intent Cider, Chick-fil-A. Really grateful for them making this happen. Thank you, all of you, for coming. Would love for you to make sure you sign up. Go to startupgrind.com/statecollege so you can get more updates, including the next time that we do one of these. So thanks again for coming. And please stick around, eat a little bit more, and get to know people. But thanks again.